Hi everybody. Don't expect you to all come on over on Christmas Day, but I really wanted to get going with this review of the book that I'm currently reading at the moment, and a review by none other than Mark Godsey of Blind Injustice. So therefore, it's quite an important document which talks about a very important piece of work, obviously. Just in case you hadn't realised, I've got my favourite jumper, my new jumper, my Christmas jumper, Green Bay Packer jumper. Hi, Millbilly. Thought that was very interesting, that clip that you sent us of Lemo, and 6 hours later they're responding to her request for information about the registration number, the license plate number. I hope Santa was good to you. So I'm just going to crack on, because I've not been given much of a window of opportunity to do this, and then I've got to get back upstairs. And hi Julie, and do some cutting of turkey and ham and all that kind of stuff. But I've been given special dispensation just for a few minutes, so make the most of it. I think we're all ready to go over here. Let me just make sure everything's working as it should do, and crack on with this. You know, look, if I'm being honest, yes, it's pretty heavy going, this book. You really have to be into this kind of stuff. One of my big problems is that when I get into something, I really do get into it, and can't let it go. Anyway, so here we go. This is, as I said, this is by Mark Godsey, and it's Shining the Bright Light on Police Interrogation. Richard Leo, Police Interrogation and American Justice, Harvard University Press, 2008. Introduction. And of course, we've had Richard Leo on the Dude's channel before, but this is going back to well, we might find out somewhere when Mark Godsey wrote this article, what time frame we're dealing with. But anyway, Richard Leo is uniquely suited to illuminate and critique the practices and legal standards surrounding police interrogation in America. Many courts and legal scholars through the years have opined on the legal standards adhering to confession law without a deep understanding of how interrogation are actually conducted in the real world, or of the psychological pressure points that ultimately bear on the matter. Now, prior to entering legal academia, however, Richard served as an associate professor of psychology and criminology. Just fell off my desk here. Move it out of the way because it's right under my foot. Sorry about that. So, prior to entering legal academia, Richard served as an associate professor of psychology and criminology and performed groundbreaking empirical research into how police interrogators obtain confessions and how their interrogations techniques affect suspects. Now, as a law professor at the University of San Francisco, Richard's new book, Police Interrogation and American Justice, deeply forges social science with legal scholarship to create an enlightening picture of the modern interrogation room, the contradictions and failures of laws designed to regulate confessions and the paths that must be taken to ensure the integrity and fairness of confessions in the future. Although interrogation practices, long veiled from public eye, have remained one of the darkest corners of the American legal system, Richard's analysis, as he notes, is based largely on the type of data most other scholars do not have access to, that is, direct observations of hundreds of police interrogations, and that's on page 5 of the book. Richard's additional research includes attendance at numerous police interrogation training seminars, analysis of interrogation training manuals published from 1940 to the present, and conducted in-depth interviews over the past decade with scores of interrogators and suspects. A score, by the way, it's an Old English term. A score is typically 20. So when somebody is, for example, 70 years and 10, they are 70. I remember that because that's on my mum's dad's grave. He was 70 years and 10. I wonder if that's the meaning of that. But anyway, scores of, so we're talking literally 40, 60, 80, probably more. His research further includes a thorough review of police reports, trial transcripts, and interrogation tapes of more than 2,000. Well, that's 200 scores, isn't it? Felony cases involving confessions. Again on page 5. It is fair to say that there are few, if any, scholars who have witnessed the interrogation battlefield from the trenches, as has Richard. He blends his knowledge of interrogations in practice with his deep understanding as a law professor and legal scholar of American interrogation law. His powerful combination of law, psychiatry, and hands-on experiences gives him a perspective on police interrogation that few others share. He provides an insight on questions that he understands are broader than the interrogation rooms where they play out. He writes, as a symbolic matter, police interrogation is a microcosm for some of our most fundamental conflicts about the appropriate relationship between the state and the individual, and about the norms that should guide state conduct, particularly manipulative, deceptive, and coercive conduct in the modern era. In short, police interrogation and confession taking go to the heart of our conceptions of procedural fairness and substantive justice, and raise questions about the kind of criminal justice system and society we wish to have. Moreover, police interrogations are a frequently repeated scene in cinema and television because they are a richly textured narrative and morality play involving innocence and guilt, good and evil, and justice and injustice. The drama and power struggle of interrogation hold our rapt attention as they feed our viscerous desire for justice, catharsis, and ultimately resolution and restoration. Leo's purpose is to highlight contradictions embedded in American police interrogation methods and the law designed to regulate them. The overarching contradiction is that the police need confessions to solve crimes, but there is almost never a good reason for a suspect to confess. The tension created by this inherent contradiction leads to several additional contradictions. Interrogations remain secret in what is considered one of the most democratic and open societies in the world. Police have created, quote, scientific interrogation techniques that are in reality unscientific and unreliable. The law requires that confessions be voluntary, but interrogations are successful because they are designed to convince suspects that they have no choice but to confess the truth is the stated goal and virtue of police interrogation. Yet police routinely rely on lies and deception to obtain confessions. Police view confessions as reliable, while in reality they are orchestrated and constructed by the police in a way that is often misleading and unreliable. And juries view confessions as the most probative evidence of guilt, but they are, in fact, quite often unreliable, or even patently false. While complaints about police interrogation methods have sometimes centered on police brutality, fair play, or human dignity, Leo's loudest complaint is the risk of false confessions by innocents that modern interrogation techniques sometimes produce and modern confession law fails to adequately regulate. Thus, his ultimate suggestions for reform focus on policy and doctrinal improvements to reduce the number of false confessions and ensure that confessions admitted at trial are trustworthy. Among these suggested reforms are implementing a legal corroboration requirement for confession admissibility in the courtroom and requiring the videotaping of what takes place in the interrogation room from beginning to end. Let me admit, at the outset, that with respect to me, at least, Richard is preaching to the choir. Richard's research has been very important in my own development as a confessions law scholar. I am a fan. When I first met Richard a few years ago, I was shocked that he was not an elderly, white-haired professor with a cane, such is the depth of his body of work, and as the director of an Innocence project. The problem of false confessions is not just an abstract scholarly interest to me, but something with which I have had to grapple in real life. While many in law enforcement may object to Richard's analysis and conclusions, he is not an enemy of police interrogation. He argues, and I agree, that when done properly, police interrogation is an unmitigated social benefit that renders enormously important outcomes. He notes that he has trained police interrogators in numerous states and served on advisory committees to police departments. He contends that it is critical not to undermine the ability of the police to perform their important function of interrogating suspects, but rather to educate others so that the quality and reliability of confessions can be improved. Nevertheless, based on my own experiences in attempting to reform interrogation practices in my home state of Ohio, I know that many will read Richard's book as a broad attack on the institution of police interrogation. Some will write it off as a liberal diatribe of a scholar who does not understand what the police are up against and what really goes on in the interrogation room. Unfortunately, because many police departments continue to resist opening up their procedures to examination and study and continue to resist videotaping of interrogations, a procedure that would provide a comprehensive record for future study, we will be unable to fully resolve this dispute. Until law enforcement allows closer scrutiny of its practices, they are on thin ice when attacking Richard's conclusions. This review is divided into 3 parts. Part 2 summarizes Leo's empirical findings with respect to interrogation practices in the real world. Part 3 examines Leo's suggested reforms. Part 4 offers my own critiques and insights. Police interrogation and the adversary system. Leo asserts that the proper role of the police is to gather case information in a neutral and dispassionate manner at the pre-adversary stage of the criminal process. The information police collect must be as complete and unbiased as possible because, in the first instance, prosecutors must use this information to decide whether to charge the suspect and therefore commence formal adversarial proceedings against him. When the adversary system later officially commences with the filing of criminal charges, judges, defense lawyers, and ultimately juries rely on the integrity of the neutral fact-finding process performed by the police. Historically and today, police have gone to great lengths through court testimony and other information disseminated to the public disseminated to the public about the investigation process to cast themselves in this neutral fact-finding role. Excuse me just one moment. I'm just going to let the dog in because he's pacing around outside. Good go. On you go, son. On you go. Apologies for that. I've got the daughter's dog pacing around outside, so it must be getting a bit cold for him. If police, on the other hand, are committed to the prosecutorial agenda in their fact-collecting process and develop evidence in a biased manner with the end of obtaining a conviction, then the formal adversary system starts off kilter. The perceptions about the case held by the crucial actors in the real adversary system, prosecutors, defense lawyers, judges, and jurors, become distorted. This can lead to erroneous results through a garbage in, garbage out sequence. Based on his empirical research, including many interviews with police interrogators, Richard asserts in Chapter 2 that the police have internalized the values and goals of the adversary system. They see themselves solely as foot soldiers for the prosecution in a war zone, a combat arena. They are highly partisan, strategic, and goal-directed. They are trained to assume that the suspects they interrogate are guilty, and that all suspects will initially lie about their guilt. Detectives perceive the innocent man in the interrogation room as an urban legend perpetuated by naive liberals, muckraking journalists, or self-serving criminal defense attorneys. Their job as interrogators is to obtain a full confession, which they then label as the truth. Moreover, the interrogation process is aimed not simply to obtain an I did it confession, but to manipulate from the suspect a police-orchestrated narrative designed to ensure a conviction, and even better, a conviction by guilty plea. Thus, the reality, says Richard, is that the police interrogation process is not a neutral, just the facts, ma'am, evidence gathering process. He writes, once police have decided to interrogate a suspect, they have, in effect, crossed the line that separates police work from prosecutorial work. They have aligned themselves with the prosecution in orientation and goal. Their function at this point becomes more prosecutorial than investigative. Now, in one of many contradictions that pervades the interrogation process, the police shield their true roles from the courts and the public by keeping interrogations hidden from public view, and then putting a spin on what actually occurs in the interrogation through their well-developed external impression management strategies. The police not only hide their role in the adversary system from the courts and public, they also hide it from the suspects they interrogate. Modern interrogation is fraudulent, not only because police are permitted to lie to suspects about the evidence they have collected, fingerprints, DNA tests, etc., but because detectives seek to create the illusion that they share a common interest with the suspect and that he can escape or mitigate punishment only by cooperating with them and providing a full confession. Although the suspect's self-interest would usually be best served by remaining completely silent, interrogators seek at every step to convince him that what is in their professional self-interest is somehow in his personal self-interest. The entire interrogation process is carefully staged to hide the fact that police interrogators are the suspect's adversary. While they portray themselves as seeking only to collect the facts and to help the suspect if he cooperates, they are, of course, they try to construct a damning case. While they portray themselves as seeking only to collect the facts and to help the suspect if he cooperates, they, of course, try to construct a damning case against him. He asserts that the genius and fraud of psychological interrogations lies in its ability to persuade the suspect to view the act of self-incrimination and thus self-conviction as both logical and rational under the circumstances. The interrogation process is additionally fraudulent because suspects rarely get the attractive deal that detectives imply that they will get from self-incrimination. Yeah, I think Brendan could tell us a little bit about that. Typically, those who confess receive the opposite of what they were promised: more and higher charges, more and harsher punishment. Thus, the suspect is deceived not only about the role of the police in the interrogation process, but the consequences of confessing. I suspected when first reading Richard's assertions here that he was preparing for an Escobedo-type argument that suspects must have an attorney present in the interrogation room pursuant to the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. Indeed, Leo makes a case reminiscent of arguments heard during the Escobedo era that police interrogation is the most crucial and most adversarial part of our criminal justice system. He ultimately does not take the Sixth Amendment route, as we will see, perhaps because he deems such a remedy unlikely to be adopted, or perhaps because he sees such a remedy as snuffing out police interrogations altogether, a medicine he does not espouse. And obviously, at one point there were suggestions that judges should be the ones that conduct interrogations, and police obviously did not like that idea at all. Now, rather, Richard makes the case that police interrogators see themselves as foot soldiers for the prosecution in our adversary system, with two goals in mind: to provide an introductory context for his later recitation of how interrogations unfold step by step in the real world, and to help us understand how police attitudes can ultimately lead to unreliable confessions. This last point sets the stage for his concluding chapters, where he lays out his recommended reforms. Admittedly, Leo describes the values and goals of detectives during interrogations in absolute and broad terms. One might criticize his analysis by suggesting that he paints with too broad of a brush. It is It is Leo does not mean to suggest, however, that in every interrogation the police automatically assume the suspect is guilty, and that in every interrogation the police attempt to bend the suspect's confession to fit their desired version of the facts, regardless of the truth. Rather, Leo is generically describing overarching values that, according to his research, permeate police culture today. In any event, my response to such criticism strikes a theme that will be frequently repeated in this review. Leo has examined and studied actual interrogations and conducted interviews with real detectives and suspects, perhaps to a greater extent than any other scholar today. If law enforcement critics wish to rebut Leo's perhaps overbroad generalizations, they need to open up the interrogation process to scrutiny by more widely adopting the videotaping requirement that has been urged by many scholars, legislators, and courts for years. I think we might just leave it there at the police interrogations in the real world yesterday and today. And I think we'll look at the third degree next. So I don't want to keep you too long. I do appreciate you all coming across to have a look at this excellent article. Obviously the interesting thing is that this law is the idea that a lawyer should be present at all interviews is something that is often presented as something that would have helped Brendan. I don't know. Would you really want Wiegand and Fassbender to have Kaczynski in the room with Brendan to try and help Brendan? I think he would have done far more to help Wiegand and Fassbender. But we do have the video of the interrogation, and it's just a mess. Even then, though, you get people such as Luke Berg and Hamilton that suggest that, there's nothing wrong with that confession. It's perfectly normal. And unfortunately, we even get Laura Nyrider when asked the question, are police allowed to bluff? And let's be honest about this. When that whole term of to be able to bluff, it sounds fairly innocuous. It sounds as if, well, it's just a little bit of banter. It's nothing much. You're allowed to bluff. Let's be honest about this. It's pure deception. It's pure lying. As we've just read in that article there, the police try and present themselves, the pat on the knee, the come on, pal, be with us, we'll go and back for you. Anything but that. They are not in the slightest bit interested in trying to help at all. Anyway, I'm gonna let you all go off. And Julie, hi there, Julie. Hi, little Barb. Hi, shaken but not stirred. I will get round to watching that Lie to Me. And I noticed what you said about you and the dude used to watch that. So I thought the dude was into stupid comedy stuff and Doctor Who and all that. I didn't realise he was into such serious stuff. But anyway, let's... Paul, hi Paul. And Millbilly, obviously. Hi Millbilly. Are you having to work tonight, Millbilly, or do you get a day off? I mean, you seem to work non-stop, dude. Anyway, all okay, I'm going to say cheerio, and we'll catch you all again tomorrow. We'll get through this article. I think it's only about let's check on something. Exactly how long is it? 26 pages. So I think we've got through. How many have we got through so far? Oh, we've got through the first 6 pages. So okay, maybe 3 more parts. Maybe not. Maybe I can get a bit quicker reading when I've not had a whole morning and afternoon of festive food and drink. Anyway, as I say, we'll catch you all again soon. Thanks for tuning in.